Thank you. She started selling Girl Scout cookies. You want one? All right, everyone, welcome. It's 5 o'clock. Yeah, somewhere. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started. We'd like to know the mayor is not late. She's actually a little bit under the weather, so she's asked that I conduct the meeting today. So we want to excuse her and wish her well. We're going to go ahead. We have no pre-agenda items, is my understanding. And because I'm in charge, I've always promised to make the meeting short. So it's actually, I had nothing to do with the agenda today. But if you want to give credit to somebody, I'll take it. So let's go ahead and get started. The most important thing, we are going to have a prayer to get started, and we have Deanna Martin here from the Interfaith Council. So if you want to go ahead and get us started correctly. Yep, if you'll stand right up to that microphone, that would be great.
Our Father in heaven, we, a few of thy children, gather here together for this city council, and we give thee thanks for our many blessings. We thank thee for life itself and for this wonderful country that we live in, for this beautiful area in which we live, and for this great city of St. George. We thank thee for these individuals who are willing to serve our community and pray for a blessing to be with them of compassion, to listen to those people whom they represent, of wisdom to be able to know and do what is right for our community. And we pray that thou will bless them in their personal lives, that they'll have health and strength to serve, and that they will have peace in their lives. And for these many things we give thee thanks and praise in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. I've asked Councilman Greg MacArthur to lead us in the pledge. All right. With that, we'll get right into our agenda, which is basically the consent calendar. And just so you know, we are removing one of the items from the consent calendar, and it was item, I didn't write it down, so it's G. So item G, that contract at the airport was not quite ready, so we're going to let them work on that, and they'll bring it back at a later date. So just as a note from the consent calendar, we'll be removing item G. Are there any other items, Council, that you want to have removed from the consent calendar, or do you want to consider individually? If none, I would accept a motion.
And Jimmy, if I could,
yes.
One item that we would want to clarify, item E. We have a couple of minor things that we're still working through with legal. There's a correction that needs to be made on the first payment of the loan from August to November. We would just like to note that item E would be subject to final legal review and approval.
I'll make a motion if you're ready for it.
Sure. Was there any other, sorry, just, If there any other change? I know, and Tawny had told me that one and I forgot it, so what else did I forget? Okay, go ahead, Danielle.
Wait,
Okay.
and are we talking about approving just the whole thing right now? We're not going through them?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a consent calendar. So
Okay.
with a consent
I'm
calendar?
the new kid on the block, so.
Yeah, so I'll do my best at explaining.
Okay.
So with a consent calendar, those are items that we approve all together. So that's the reason for my question. Is there an item that anyone would like to see removed that we can discuss independently?
Okay, I do have a couple that I would like
Okay.
to discuss
Okay.
on C and E. So I just wanted to clarify on C, for the park, there's a $42,000 in consulting fees. I'm just kind of curious as far as the extent of that and just the overall cost altogether with a lot of our other shortages right now with public safety and looking at ways that we can fund that. It just concerns me putting this much money toward a park when, maybe we need to look at allocating funds to getting more officers.
And that's a perfectly good question, and I know.
So do you want to vote on the rest of them and then have the discussion on the ones that she's pulling off?
So is that better than just if we could leave them? Okay, let's do that. How about if we remove item?
So C and E are the ones that I.
Let's remove items C and E then to have further discussion. Would I need a motion for that, or can we just remove those and then? Or you could make your motion that way. Danielle?
Yeah, I can make a motion that we remove items C and E from the consent calendar to be discussed and then voted on, so we can approve the consent calendar as proposed, removing items C and E.
Second that motion.
So we have a motion by Danielle, a second by Greg. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the consent calendar passes with the exception of C and E. So let's take C first and let's have a discussion on that. Interestingly enough, Adam, you and I were talking about consulting fees and how it's like, oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, I'm like 42,000 and just a consulting fee. I mean, this seems a little.
And then we see sometimes.
I mean, I know I'm new to this, but.
And sometimes we see now mobilization fees. So, Adam, do you want to kind of tackle that and explain that also?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. In the world of engineering and design, a 10% design fee is quite normal. That fee is not surprising. Of course, to us who are not in the industry, we look at it and go, man, that's a lot of money for design. It is right in line with industry standards. So for the total dollar amount for the project, that engineering fee I think would be standard from any consultant that would bid and be involved in the project. Specific to Temple Springs, that project was identified as a council priority, and so it's been something that we've been planning for probably not 2 years, maybe a year and a half, and we're finally to that point where we're ready to move forward on construction.
And I'll just share in regards to our public safety, this park is actually a public safety priority. It was brought to us by the police department as a location that we were having a lot of problems with. And one of our police officers who's not on the department anymore, Ivor Fuller, I said the wrong name, right? Ivor Fuller. He really headed this project up because cleaning it up and making it safe, especially as it's an extension and connection from the university up to Red Hills Parkway, is a pretty big deal as far as connection and safety. So he wanted to see this done for public safety reasons and also for public beautification and trail connection. So there's a lot of goals that this park will fulfill. So, and I don't believe that it's the same fund that we would be funding public safety from, is it, Adam?
Yeah, speak about that.
Yeah, not necessarily. Deanna, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a general fund project. Yeah, come on up if you don't mind.
Okay. Is this on? So Temple Springs Park is being funded from our general capital project fund, which is what we use one-time funds for. At the end of the year, if we do have any excess money in our general fund, if our revenues exceeded our expenditures, then there's sometimes excess money and we can move that into our capital project fund. But at that point, it becomes one-time funds that we would only use for one-time projects. We wouldn't infuse it back to fund ongoing operations, because at some point, those one-time funds run out. And so it would be almost like you taking money from your savings account and wanting to put it towards your mortgage. At some point, it runs out. So our capital project fund is geared towards one-time projects like this, and then it does not take away from our day-to-day operations for public safety. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So once it's in the capital fund, what all can it be used for?
It's generally used for departments that are in the general fund. For example, we could purchase a one-time fire truck for it. We can bring some money back in from the capital project fund to purchase police vehicles or park amenities, something that is one time that doesn't have an ongoing expense at that point. So once we move it into the capital project fund, we can usually bring it back in and help fund some of the other general fund items, but they're usually one-time expenses.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Have we looked in at all to getting private sponsorships for these parks of, going around to maybe some of the bigger businesses and saying, hey, this park enriches the entire community. Would you be willing? I mean, a lot of them need to donate money somewhere anyway. I just wonder if that could be a way to help, they're sacred funds, the taxpayer dollars, in a way to kind of minimize. I just don't know if that's something that's been looked into at all with that.
Yeah, we're actually, it's not quite ready. We think hopefully soon. Deanna's actually had this idea that she's pushing, and I think it's a great idea to really get into kind of the Adopt a Park and really involve our corporate partners, especially in the ownership and maintenance of the amenities that provide so much value to our community. So that's something that we do have in the works. I hope we're able to roll that out soon, just to get more broad support in general for those types of facilities.
yeah,
Awesome.
we'll also seek grants, or we do have like the Rotary Club and other civil partners in the community that will give us donations, but they don't go quite as far as we need them to go. But we try to do everything that we can to leverage any of our funds and seek out any grants or any contributions that we can use to make our money go even further with a lot of our projects we do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Okay, is there any other questions on that? Really, it's one of those things that comes down to priorities and, where we spend that money. So those are good questions, all good questions and things that we can struggle with from time to time. So if there's no other questions, then I can take a motion on item C.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve item C on the consent calendar.
Second.
So we have a motion from Danielle and a second from Natalie. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, item E. We're back to E now, right?
Yeah. Huh?
Okay.
Yes. And council, if you'd like, I'd like to ask Mark Mortensen to come up and provide a little bit of background information on this and answer any questions you might have on it.
Perfect.
We are in 4.5 years into a 5-year lease with the golf carts, and over the last 2 years, I would say that the golf carts have been used more than normal. We've had some phenomenal years in golf over the last 2 years, and so our 4.5-year-old carts have got usage like 6.5 or 7-year-old carts. And so we're asking that the council consider approval of a new 5-year lease, the first year of which would be paid for through Intermountain Golf Cart. We would pay for the second and following years after the first year to the tune of $213,000, which is consistent with what we're paying today for the lease that we're sunsetting essentially. Right now, we had to get in line to order the carts because of shortages. So we're on a waiting list, and we do expect the carts to arrive in spring, probably March or April is what we're hoping for. But right now, with the approval of this lease, and I need to back up too, our golf carts come with a 4-year warranty on a 5-year lease. So you can imagine what happens in that 5th year is your costs go up because you're on the hook for all the repairs of the carts. So, we're spending some serious dollars on repairs right now. Golf carts are failing in the middle of play sometimes, and they're probably our number one concern by golfers on the course today. And so we're asking that the council approve a new lease, and we would actually see our first payment as City Manager Lenhard indicated that we'd see our first payment in November of 2023, with Club Car making the first payment this next year in 2022. So if there's specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those on the lease itself.
Will you remind me how much the lease was? I know it was on the...
$213,000 and change per year.
Okay.
And that's for 282 carts as part of the negotiated lease. And we did go out to bid. We went out to bid with 3 separate companies. We did a thorough review with the budget team, and they selected as their preferred vendor in this situation Club Cart, Intermountain Club Cart. But we are getting 282 carts in this lease, 20 of which will be donated for free as part of it. So we're paying for 262 carts as part of the lease.
Mark, would you say that these pay for themselves due to club car rentals? Is it the cost covered by the rental of as you play?
Golf is paying for itself at this point.
Well, it looks like based off of last year's revenue was right around the same cost, because the revenue was $232,000, and this is, you said 214, or so it's roughly the same as the revenue from last year.
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. The 232 number, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm
just
familiar
on the
with that.
revenues generated by the cart rentals themselves. That's correct. If you look at overall rentals
Yeah.
for golf in fiscal year 21, for example, if you take out the one-time projects like the Southgate remodel and then some equipment purchases for maintenance, profits exceed expenses by about $1 million in golf in FY21.
But do we have a breakdown of actual cart rental fees?
We do.
And is that what the number is too?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's the number you're referring
and the
to,
expense
right?
sheet that you sent me, that I thought that was golf overall, the expenditures versus the revenues for last year, which ended up being about a $232,000
I think that's
revenue.
right because of what
That's correct. Yeah, that's
Adam's
right.
saying. It's because
Right.
they made $1 million, but then it was with the Southgate renovation.
Yeah, we had some
so that
one-time
was
projects that we
right.
did.
So
So
really,
so that's
they made-
not just cart rentals, that's total.
That's total.
Profit.
Even
$1
if you
million.
include the Southgate clubhouse remodel in the overall cost, yeah, we ended up making $232,000 above expenditures, right, in revenues, right.
I think it'd be good to mention on this. So we're talking about cost for golf right here. It's covering itself, which is good.
Correct.
But if we look at this, I was in my previous position with the Chamber of Commerce. I went and promoted golf in Southern Utah as part of the county's. It was A to Zion back then, but so I'd go and promote golf. I went to Canada one time to do it, and we would be there in a list in a line of vendors across the United States because it's a United States golf show. And we were just one little booth, a 10 by 10. And out of all the rows that were there, we were quite possibly the number one stop. Hey, I've been to your little teeny town and your golf courses are amazing and we're going back. And so it puts us on the map globally, and the revenues that we bring in through tourism and tax dollars and things like that, sales tax, keeps our tax basis lower due to this. So I think golf is doing us a lot of good when it comes down to it.
So, yeah, I appreciate that. Not only does golf pay for itself, but it also generates, from just visitors alone, an extra $20 million in our community.
I agree
year.
with what Councilman MacArthur said. And then also in December of this last year, our golf department did a survey, and they had 2,054 respondents. So if anybody's interested in seeing that, I can share it with you. Just excellent reviews from locals and a lot of, sharing of all the benefits. They haven't compiled all of the comments yet, but once they do, I'm sure Colby will share it with us. But it's really great data on not only how much, Greg's right, it's a huge economic benefit for our community. It keeps our property taxes low, but it's also a huge benefit for our residents. So
where does that $232,000 go that was made by the golf course?
It goes
To
back
the general fund.
Back in the general fund?
But we do account separately for golf revenues, and we're typically reinvesting those, making
Into
sure that our
golf.
facilities are, up to date and meeting the needs of our customers.
But my concern comes back to, again, I'll be the unpopular one here talking about proper role of government. And, I'm thankful that Mark and Colby, you met with me to help clarify some of the questions I had as far as the profitability and things with the golf courses. But really it comes down to, is this really government's role to be involved in golf courses? And I know we already have the courses, they're there, but maybe we could look at ways to be more effective with taxpayer dollars. Kind of same thing with the parks of maybe we could look to local businesses to sponsor a golf cart. Or, I would as a business, I'd sponsor a golf cart, pay for one and, put my business on there. Or sponsor a golf hole, things like that we could, instead of potentially raising taxes or things like that, look to private donors with our golf courses.
Why I can appreciate that. I can appreciate asking the community, because I think that is the Dixie spirit, is ask the community to be involved. I think that creates another job for somebody else to go out and seek that investor. And then if they don't pay, then what happens to the golf cart? And if we do it singly, are we going to get the same benefit from this golf package? I'm not a golfer. I don't understand. But I understand the economic I think it is to St. George. Like, we do benefit from it, and I feel like the people who come to golf are very low impact on this community. We don't, they roll into the golf carts, they do their golfing, they leave, they eat dinner, they go back to their hotel, and I don't feel like they clog up our streets. We don't shut down anything for them. They just come in and golf quietly and leave quietly. And so I like the economic development portion of the golf course, even though I don't understand why anybody would want to golf.
Yeah, I agree, Natalie. And I think that we have to remember, that there's a lot of reasons why we formed cities. And one of those reasons is to economically benefit each other, help all boats rise together, right? We're trying to benefit the health and the economy of our entire region. If golf courses were losing money and the taxpayers were supplementing them, it would be a different conversation, but they're not. They're doing really well and they're providing a lot of benefit. And really, if you could add up like Greg says, if you could really total up the economic benefit, we didn't make $1 million. We made a whole lot more than that. So that's benefiting everybody. That's benefiting local jobs. It's creating local jobs. And I agree when it comes, I'm not opposed to looking at the idea of sponsorships, but those can be really tricky. And we have to remember every nonprofit in our community, which we value immensely, they're also seeking those same sponsorships. So we kind of have to balance, be cautious where we ask and make sure we ask in places where we really need those sponsorships. So I think in a space where we're not losing money, that wouldn't necessarily be our best space, in my opinion, to be asking for sponsorships. But, there's definitely a place for that. So.
And I don't know that it's the case every year, though, that we're making money. I think there have been some years that we have been in the hole. It looks like overall, looking back over the last several years, we maybe kind of evened out because we have had some really good years, especially with COVID now. And I agree, golf is great. People love it in the area. My concern always just comes back to using the taxpayer dollar in the most effective, most important ways, and how can we look to cut government spending versus grow government spending.
Mark, could you come back up? Are there things that the city has done? I know watering has been one of the things we've tried to cut back on. But over the last few years, hasn't the golf courses tried to do some things to help with that, to lower costs?
Oh, yeah, we're constantly looking at that, you bet. One of the things that we do through sponsorships is would be our scorecards. We don't pay for them. At the driving ranges, we're always looking for sponsors to sponsor driving ranges. One of the things that the range balls at the driving ranges. We also have benches at the golf courses that are put in by sponsors. And the club cart sponsorships certainly could be a thing. Yeah, if we're interested in going that route, it would be pretty labor intensive to do that, but it could be done for sure. As far as water conservation and cutting back, this next year we are going to be proposing to you, actually in the budget retreat, that we not overseed. That will be a savings of about $200,000 to $300,000 this next year, and we're going to propose that we do that about every third or fourth year. So that's a substantial savings there as well. So yeah, we're always looking for ways to cut. We run really lean at our golf courses, just like the rest of the city does. And again, even if you're in a year where the golf courses don't break even on green fees, remember the economic benefit can be in the tens of millions of dollars. So what you're seeing at the counter is just one of the benefits of those revenues collected at the counter is just one of the benefits of golf, and it's far-reaching. We've tried to calculate the impacts, the far-reaching economic impacts of golf, and it's pretty tough to calculate. But you can imagine, the hotel industry, the restaurant industry, retailers. If the golf courses were to disappear, what the ripple effect that could have on our community. It's an economic engine, and in St. George, we don't treat golf as recreation. We absolutely treat it as economic development. That's why they're there, and that's why we're in that business.
I think it's also really important to remember the distinction between taxes and user fees. So in the case of golf, we're talking primarily about user fees. This is an activity, a service that's covered and paid for through the fees of those who are using it. So it's not your property tax dollars generally. We're talking about a totally separate pot of money that's coming in from the golfers themselves.
And that's a really interesting point also, because it is being paid for by that, and yet we are able to keep our fees really low. And so residents are still able to afford, to golf. It's not a high-priced golf experience, but a really excellent golf experience.
But essentially, we are competing with the private sector.
Yeah, I think some things we've chosen to, for instance, if those golf courses were all to go private, most residents wouldn't be able to afford them. The prices would have to be so high. So we're kind of winning in both areas, in my perception, because we're keeping them affordable for our residents, and we're also using them as an economic driver for our area. So it's like I wasn't on the council when those decisions were made to acquire golf courses, but the council did decide that, before us, and we have them now, and in my perception, they're being run really well in a way that they benefit the community both financially and also in a recreation way, that people are able to enjoy those people who do, not Natalie, but other people.
So we could potentially use those fees to, through the golf course, if there's an excess, to go toward public safety.
You could, yeah, you could. I would. Golf is interesting because I don't want to speak for my predecessor, but he was a big golfer, and I think he was always very concerned about the perception with his involvement and love for golf about directing funds into that activity. I think an argument could be made that we probably fell pretty far behind on maintenance and repair of our golf courses. For example, the clubhouses. I don't know if you ever saw the Dixie Red Hills clubhouse before we renovated it, or Southgate before it was renovated, but you could go to the St. George clubhouse today and you could see that it is not, it's not up to the St. George standard by any means. It's quite embarrassing, actually, and so we do have plans to renovate that one. The course that we've been on, that we've been on with respect to golf revenues is we're trying to reinvest in those facilities. We want them to be successful long term. So we have been taking revenues and we've been putting them right back into our courses to make sure that they're the types of facilities we can be proud of and that continue to draw those tax dollars, the sales tax dollars, for example, from outside the community, because that's where we really benefit as residents. We get an extra benefit there. But of course, the council could certainly direct any type of change in that philosophy or policy.
Did you have something, Greg?
I'll just say, when it comes to golf in St. George, we just got to look at it in a historical perspective. St. George, you go back to the 1960s, this was not a nice place to live. This was a hot desert place that nobody wanted to be, and it didn't grow because there's just no reason to be here, really. I mean, it is pretty around us, but it was just so hot. So what happened was nobody could really afford to do something that made this place great, and so that's why the municipality got involved. Let's put something in place that makes it so people want to come here. And there was a guy that was driving through that was down in Palm Springs. He knew golf courses, and he said, hey, this place is beautiful. Let me give you some ideas on what you should do to make it so more people will want to come here. Well, we're all ears. There wasn't the money in place to be able to do that. So way back then, the decision was made, hey, let's all get together and through a municipality, let's help create this golf course. And that's how we got Dixie Red Hills Golf Course. And by doing that, the economic impact that we received at that time was incredible. People would finally have a reason to stop in this little podunk town. And so as that started growing, then we saw that was successful, and then we made some more and things like that, just because that's what made it so that we could make this town a successful place that people want to live and move to and get more revenues and things that make a better place to live. And so historically, it's not like we just jumped in and, hey, let's take over private golf. It was, let's figure out a way that we can actually make this work. And that's what grew to this point. I don't think we're going to go out and buy any golf courses now, but the history on it is kind of why we got and why we're involved. And I actually, me personally, I consider us lucky that we're in it now, because we can control it. We can make sure that it is a high quality thing. It's something that we're known for. And again, the multiplier that trickles down from all these people coming in our community makes it so my property taxes are lower, which I'm grateful for as well. So I don't know, just kind of some comments on golf. I'm pro golf.
Good discussion, and I'll just chime in a little bit because I don't think it's an unpopular opinion, and I think it's always a good discussion to have what the proper role of government is. And just by way of information also, and I don't know if any of you guys are here, but we actually had discussion on this very item of ridding ourselves of a golf course as maybe a way, because since I've been here, golf
I
has
second that motion.
Yeah, golf has not made a lot of money, but for reasons that you've heard up here today, golf came to St. George as an economic driver, and we looked at it from that standpoint. Now, I think this is maybe even more of a philosophical discussion about the proper role of government. At least this is civics, according to Jimmy, and the proper role of government at different levels. And so, just from my opinion, the reality is, if we were sitting here and we were in the United States legislature, this would be a totally inappropriate activity to buy a golf course or to have a golf course. In this case, and I have a lot of discussions about this with someone who I consider a friend who is very constitutional minded, who I've learned a lot with, and we disagree on the issue of parks and golf and things. And there's a reason why I believe this is a proper role of St. George City. We are incorporated, which in my mind means we're a corporation in the city, or we're like a large homeowners association if you want to talk about it that way. So then we come down to these minute decisions that we're making that you would never think are okay for on the national level, but we're making these decisions for our neighbors who we promise to represent on a lot of issues that might seem overreaching. For example, one thing I struggled with first coming on the council was zoning. I mean, by nature of zoning, we're telling people what to do with their private property. So we've agreed in this country, in most cases, in most cities, municipalities and counties, that this government body is going to help make those decisions on what's built where, so that we can all live together on 10,000 square foot lots without having too many conflicts, without affecting my neighbor's property values. Now, is it perfect? It's not. So then it comes down to the philosophical discussion of things like parks and arts right, Danielle? And so I spent some time early on, trying to reconcile this with some of my super conservative leanings and my love for the Constitution and not wanting to overstep the bounds of government. And, there's some good thoughts by Utah's first governor, Brigham Young, about the civic benefit of arts and parks that I was able to wrap my brain around. To borrow a phrase from the previous city manager, I'm not that artsy-fartsy, but I learned to appreciate what that brings to our community and how we do that. Now, what that means is we still have to be able to take the pulse of the public and say, is this what the public wants? And how can I, very importantly, take these sacred funds, which are taxpayers' money, and how do we spend them appropriately? I'm super excited that golf is finally paying for itself. And so it's one of those things where we can get the economic benefit. And like Greg said, this is something that we don't always understand, is that it could be one of the reasons why our property taxes are what they are and as low as they are, because we have these other things that are bringing in revenue from outside that can help us keep those property taxes down. So it's a whole philosophical debate that we have had in the past and we should have in the future of how can we do that. Now, I can say this, unloading the golf course idea did meet quite a little bit of dissension, and if you want to fill this room full of people, we can start having that discussion again, and that's okay. But I think philosophically, we can have that discussion, and we should always be reminded of the proper role of government. Again, in my opinion, we are another subdivision of government that has been asked to do things that it would not be appropriate, probably even on the state level, but on the local level, we're being asked to make some tough decisions by our community. This is the form of government that we chose. And if we want to change that, let's have that discussion and try to look at that. But it would be super hard in my mind to try to unload these beautiful open spaces. We know that most private companies probably wouldn't make it, and they're not interested in the economic benefit of the entire county or the entire city. They're interested in the bottom line. So that's just my opinion on it, and how I've personally tried to view it as I have those same concerns as Michelle does. So that being said, any other discussion?
I can definitely appreciate what you're saying. I think my issue comes to, we swear an oath to uphold both the U.S. and state constitution. And I even just last night, for that same kind of dilemma, read through the state constitution again, and I don't see anywhere in there that justifies being involved in those type of industries.
Yeah, and we could go back and forth about whether it justifies or whether it prohibits it. It doesn't prohibit it either. Now, if we were on the federal government level, I'd say it prohibits it because those rights are held to the states individually. I think we've been given some leeway by the state as a subdivision of the state to do these kinds of things. It's not just us; it's being done everywhere. Now, we could argue that that's wrong, and we should change that across the board. And I'm okay to have that discussion. I'm just, again, having a discussion about where I've had the same concerns as you is what I'm trying to say, and right. This is where my mindset is. So, but I would agree, and I would just argue back that we are a different subdivision, and while I appreciate what is said in the Constitution, I don't see anywhere where it says a incorporated city cannot own a golf course. I could argue that all day as long. Now, if I were the king, we wouldn't own a golf course. But this is something that I think the public has in general approved, and that we've come to the agreement that we were better off in this position than dispersing of those golf courses, and maybe some down the road they become a subdivision, and we lose that open space, and we lose that economic driver. That has fluctuated over the years, but as we know right now, we're sitting fairly good, and that's exciting to me. And I don't want to compete with the private sector either, and we have that discussion from time to time. We should continue that. So, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it being brought up, and we should always discuss that. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Great discussion. You ready for a motion?
If there's no further discussion, I'll take a motion on item E.
You guys ready for me to make a motion? Okay.
This is on the golf carts, remember?
This is on, yes.
lease.
This is on the golf cart lease. It's listed as E on the consent calendar, and I make a motion that we approve subject to legal review.
Second.
So we have a motion by Danielle, a second by Greg. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Thank you. Motion passes. Very good discussion. And I do you?
Oh yeah,
do
we
we
were
need to
supposed
do
to say
that?
our names.
Yeah, because we're doing
After
the
one
new
meeting.
voting thing.
Do we have to roll call as we?
No, you can say all, with one nay from,
You want us to just go back through?
Okay.
you can go individually, however you want.
Okay. So we do need to announce that way, or do you have that in the minutes already?
No, for the people who are listening.
Oh, that's right.
They are not going to know who.
Okay. So for the public's information, then I will just announce that the voting was 4-1 with Councilwoman Michelle Tanner as a nay. How's that? Does that work? Which the previous motion would have been the same. The first motion was unanimous. How's that? Okay. All right. I'll get through it, trust me, one way or the other, whether we fall off the ledge or get through it. Is there anything else we need to discuss? Or we don't have any appointments. I spoke with the mayor. She had no appointments. No need for a closed meeting. Are there any reports? We did have a great visit with our legislature yesterday. I think we made some great headway on some of the projects that we need to work on. I thought it was a beneficial meeting or a beneficial trip this time. And identify some things that we should be concerned about. And we got to visit, besides Greg, because he wanted to go home, we did visit the Point, which is the 127-bed hotel that Switchpoint purchased as part of a senior, low-income, and veteran housing. And it was awesome.
Really,
I thought it was
really
great.
impressive facility. And, that was consulted on and really started by Carol, right?
Yep.
By Carol Hollowell, who is one of our residents and just an absolutely amazing person. We're so blessed to have her in our community. And then I would just add that we also got to spend some time with our youth city council. And I love that we have that program. It's just such a neat opportunity for kids to learn about government. They get to go to all of our different departments. They got to meet our legislators. Our legislators were so gracious to take them on a tour of the Capitol. And so great youth group that is, our shining future. They're really impressive.
I'll comment on that one. Our state legislatures are very accessible. You always go up there and they're always talking about how some people have a hard time getting in touch with them and try to make friends and things like that, but I've never felt that way with ours. They've always been there. Anytime you call them, they're always calling you right back. We got great state representatives. And I got to make a comment on the Point. I did want to go.
Yeah.
Schedules didn't work. So.
Yeah. No, that's good.
I appreciate our local representatives too, because you could tell they were busy, they had meetings to be to, and they made a point to meet with us the best they could and listen and really hear what we had to say. We even ended up with somebody else at our table that thought we were the cool group to hang out with, but I really did, and I felt that they really listened and heard our concerns, and we're going to work towards that.
Yeah. And speaking to what Michelle was talking about earlier, as far as public buy-in on some of these things, that building was purchased. The full purchase price, I think, was $9.5. Is that what we decided? Or the donations were $9.5 million. The seller actually lowered the price once he realized what it was for by $2 million, and then we were able to get money from a variety of different private entities to be able to do that shelter. It's super cool. A private donor, some county money, some different grants. There was a whole bunch of different things, and then they're putting the residents to work too, the ones that can. Super awesome.
I think I was so impressed with that. The fact that it was them cooking, it was them cleaning, it was them fixing up their projects, and it gave them a sense of ownership in their own community and to serve each other. Mm-hmm. And the residents knew each other, they interacted with each other, and to see that kitchen come to light, I think will be just a wonderful thing. And that it's almost like its own little system right there. It's far away from everything, but having the 2 buses and one of the residents being able to drive those people to their appointments was pretty
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
And something to talk about too, and as you all hear how a good SwitchPoint is doing it right, one of the keys is that case management. If you remember those offices in the front and that cute bubbly, is it okay to say that? She's a caseworker, and she was just like, hey, come in. It was like, man, that's,
She was very welcoming.
yeah, it was super cool. And you think she probably has such good success in helping those people. And that's a key to what SwitchPoint does, is that case management, accountability, where this isn't just throwing money at the homeless. This is saying, hey, you need help, we're here to help you. Otherwise, we're not. And that's a big key. So when you hear people say, or people who have the purse strings, or people that may want to donate, that's the key of how it's being done differently. We're not really reinventing the wheel at SwitchPoint. We're just taking those simple things that have worked and making them a priority. So, and you guys saw that with Carol and how she was like, nope, this is how we do it. Boom. If you're going to be here, this is what you do.
And one of the shining stars from SwitchPoint was sitting at the front desk checking in residents.
Right, a former resident down here of SwitchPoint was there working a job, moved back to Salt Lake, and working at the front desk and being a productive member of society.
She ran for city council too. She's amazing. Oh, you're talking about a different one?
Yeah.
Oh, the
yeah.
one down
There's
here
another one,
ran
yeah.
for city council. Yeah.
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 But you're right. There was another one that ran for city council. Mm-hmm. So it's super cool to be involved in that. Sorry, we've made this meeting longer than it needed to be.
I know I was going to give you a shortest of meeting award, and now you don't get it.
I'll take the blame for that one.
Yeah, well, I talked way too long
It was a
too.
good
So
di-
no, that was a good
good
discussion.
discussion.
I really do appreciate it, and I'm glad we're having those discussions, and we should have more. We need to have more of those in the future. You know, we want to be doing the right thing. So, anything else? Any other reports since I've commandeered the microphone? Okay. If none, I will take another motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Greg, second by Danielle. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. We're done.